Good morning. This is the second of 4 Sundays. This class is Digital Parenting. If you're here for TRC 101, it's in the chapel down the hallway. So this week, second of 4 classes. This week is cell phones and teenage girls. I see a lot of teenage girls in here, some of them my own, and we'll see how this goes down. I guess I'll find out afterwards. Let's open in prayer. Lord, grant us wisdom today as we consider how to apply your truths in our context today with the tools and technologies we have, ever potent. May we use them for your glory. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, perhaps we should silence our cell phones. Does that sound like an archaic thing to say? An anachronism almost? Nobody says that anymore. What is that proof of? It's totally ingrained into the life of society, right? You don't even have to mention it. Okay, this last week, Pastor Gage Crowder introduced us to a theology of technology. And one of the low-level takeaways I took from that class, which I really hadn't thought of before, is that really technology is any man-made thing. In another sense, we think of technology as bleeding-edge technology or recent inventions, recently invented technology. If technology is a man-made thing, then a mountain is not technology, a tree is not technology, but a Amish pair of suspenders is technology. An Amish house is technology, right? It's man-made, it's artificial. Now, artificial has another connotation as well, like fake or cheap. But basically, it's art, it's craft, it's made. Fast forwarding, Pastor Crowder introduced us to 3 approaches to technology. And remember what they are? They're kind of logical. One is retreat, where we eschew and avoid technology. Another one is to surrender to it, to go whole hog, to follow our desires with abandon. And the third, which we would affirm, is to redeem technology, to buy it back. To use it for God's glory, to use it rightly and righteously, to give thanks for it. And so that's our goal today. And we're going to be talking specifically about cell phones, both generally and in the life of a teenage girl. So that background from last week draws us to our central question today. How do we rightly apply or redeem this potent tool, the cell phone, in households with daughters or in the life of a teenage girl? Sound good? So that's what we're tackling today. Some general observations. All people are the same. Would you agree with that? All people are the same. What do I mean by that? We have many of the same fundamental desires and longings. We have common weaknesses, whether man or woman, whether first century person or 21st century person. We clearly have many, many common temptations, many common gifts, a common mission, and so all people are the same. Another general observation, all people are different. And we know this is true. Men and women are different. Boys and girls are different in many ways. Each person may have unique strengths or temptations. Next week, given that people are different, we're going to consider cell phones and sons. My wife and I are now keenly interested in this with a young son, our first son. And there are some significant differences that we're already seeing. And so that's going to be very helpful for us. But this week, girls. So if all people are the same as a generalization and all people are different as a generalization, what can we say about generalizations in general? They are helpful and they are accurate as generalizations. And I introduce this topic this way because we're going to be making some generalizations today. And I've found that our culture often avoids generalizations for fear of offending a particular party with the generalization. And you can do that, and so we have to be wise in our speech and consider our audience. But the Bible is full of generalizations. Talks sweeping language about Pharisees, about Cretans, about fools, about men, about women, about the poor, about the wealthy, all kinds of generalizations. And we know that specific situations require specific application of biblical wisdom. And so that's all true, and I affirm that today. So today we're going to cover some general principles, and then I'm going to end the lesson with 10 practical recommendations for families in the context of cell phones and teenage girls. So some generalizations today and some recommended application. This is clearly an urgent topic because we all know the ills of cell phones. We know the downsides. We also know many of the positives, and they merit consideration. I'd like to start by contrasting two potent tools, dynamite and a cell phone. And we're gonna draw some similarities and then some points of contrast. Now, we typically don't handle dynamite. I venture to say most of us in this room, all of us have probably never even touched dynamite, may not have even ever seen dynamite. I don't even know what form dynamite takes today. I'm used to Wile E. Coyote and a red round cylinder with a fuse on the end, and that's dynamite to me. Dynamite famously has been used to build roads, tunnels, dams, canals, hydroelectric plants. In a word, drawing back to last lesson, cities. Anybody know who invented dynamite? Alfred Nobel, Nobel Peace Prize. Yep, he invented dynamite, an incredible invention. As we know, dynamite can also be used to destroy roads, tunnels, dams, hydro plants, cities, and people. And so here we have this very potent tool, dynamite. Likewise, cell phones are very potent for good and bad, as we know. So there's strong similarities between these potent technological inventions, dynamite and the cell phone. Now I want to draw our attention to a key difference between dynamite and cell phones. And that is this, the time and effort to transition the same tool from good use to bad. So let's imagine someone working on a construction crew building a road, and they're blasting a mountain, back in the 1800s, and got some free time to think while he's blasting away, the explosives engineer, and he says, I could use this dynamite to rob a bank vault. And so he begins down that path. He's going to, and this has happened in history, of course, he's going to use dynamite to rob a bank vault. What separates him from his current work to the next day or the next week or the next month robbing the bank vault? Well, significant time, distance, exertion separates his good use from the bad. And this gives him time to flee temptation, right? To consider what he's about to do. It has to be premeditated. It has to be considered and planned. In contrast, consider the cell phone. You're studying your Bible on your phone, and then an alert pops up, and the next thing you know, you've wasted an hour buying things you don't need, becoming jealous of your neighbor, and possibly giving in to worse temptations. Just like that. And we've all been there. There is almost no barrier between the use of good, use of the tool for good, and the use of the tool for bad. Just the flick of a thumb. And so this is a key principle. Friction in transitioning from a good use to a bad use is very important. Dynamite has external friction, the laws of physics, time, geography. You have to have some skill with it, some training, and what you do if you're going to go rob a bank vault could be very visible to others, right? Others would have a chance to say, hey, what's going on there? In contrast, with a cell phone, there's no time required for transition. There's no laws. Doesn't take any skill. Famously, 3-year-olds can engage with a touch screen, and often there's no watching eyes. So there's no external fences. And worse yet, as we well know and is documented both inside the church and a lot outside the church, software on our phones are designed to make the transition between different uses of the tool as frictionless as possible. And not only that, but enticing. Dynamite knows nothing of human nature, absolutely nothing. And yet it can be used for bad. The cell phone is as potent as dynamite, and it does know your nature. It knows it very, very well. In fact, it's studying your nature, as we know, and it's improving its model and its understanding of human nature with every use. And so this is what makes a potent tool like a cell phone so sinister in its bad use. It knows your nature, it knows your temptations. All right, as we consider a cell phone today, there's two approaches. One is the critique, right? We could get into all kinds of studies about the ills of cell phones, talk about dopamine, there's lots of good stuff out there. Consider humans' physiology, Famously, on the dopamine topic, you do something on your phone, the app responds in a way to trigger a dopamine release, which is a reward neurotransmitter, and that causes us to want more of what we just did, and so we get sucked in and the cycle continues. And this is all relevant and important, but I'm going to assume we're all generally aware of this. And the approach I'm going to take today, that we're going to take in our discussion, is very different. I'll call it a fabric level or forest level approach, and that is the mission approach, or the telos approach. If I'm a girl, what is my mission on this earth? Let's start there, and then we'll get to cell phones. How can technology, like my cell phone, help me in my mission? How can technology, like a cell phone, hurt me in my mission? So that's where we're going to go. We're going to go mission first and big, and then we're going to go to small and consider a specific tool and its impact on our mission or our purpose. And the advantage of the mission perspective, I'll call it mission, you could call it purpose, is that it doesn't require us to assume all technology is bad. It doesn't require us to assume that a specific tool, a piece of technology, is bad. And it emphasizes all of life first, allowing us then to consider a specific tool in the proper context. And it will also reveal helpful tests for our use of this technology. So our outline for our approach today is first mission, specifically then, or generally, but more specifically, a woman's mission. Then we'll consider some enablers to her mission and then apply it to the cell phone. So let's start with mission. Stated as fundamentally as you can, what's a human's mission? What is a person's mission? What is your purpose? It's not a trick question. If you grew up in the Presbyterian church, you probably know the answer. Yeah, to glorify God and enjoy Him forever. And that's from the Westminster Catechism. Specifically, in the larger catechism, what is the chief and highest end of man? Man's chief and highest end is to glorify God and fully to enjoy Him forever. Now notice there's a referent there. The answer to the question, what is man's chief and highest end, is not to glorify and enjoy, period. We are really good at that, right? And the cell phone is a supreme example of glorifying and enjoying, right? But it's really important that in this answer, backed up by Scripture, that there's a key referent, right? We're to glorify God and enjoy Him. So the referent is really key. Where does joy fit into this? Well, John 15:8 says, "By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, and so prove to be my disciples." And we can connect it to other scriptures, Psalm 119 and others. Obedience and joy are tied together. And so one of the key ways we glorify our Lord is by obeying Him, and obeying Him in joy. So if that's layer one of our purpose, would be summarized in the catechism question, what would be some fundamental biblical statements about our mission as humans? Also not a trick question. Old Testament, what would you pick? The most fundamental mission statement.
Fruitful and multiply.
That's right, the creation mandate, commonly called, right? To be fruitful and multiply. Specifically, Genesis 1:28, and God blessed them, Adam and Eve, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over every living thing that moves on the earth." So we are to fill the earth and rule it in God's name as vice regents or vice rulers. In that passage I read is dominion, right? Subdue the earth, have dominion over it. Dominion literally means house rule. So we are to rule God's house on His behalf. Rule the creation. Now, when you think of ruling the creation, you think of authority structures, but it also means to craft it, right? So when you take a tree and turn it into studs for a house, you are subduing the earth. When you take an animal and harness it and use it to pull a wagon or to give milk, you are subduing the earth. Many, many examples, as we well know. So we have the creation mandate. And then the creation mandate is, as we well know, is restated in the New Testament, amplified in a different context. And that would be what?
Make disciples of all nations.
Yeah, very good. The creation mandate. Matthew 28, 19 to 20. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I have commanded you. So I would summarize it this way. The Great Commission tells us to fill the earth with worshipers of the triune God and to obey him joyfully. That's the Great Commission and the creation mandate. What's the difference between the two? Well, the Great Commission is in the context of a fallen world, right? Whereas the creation mandate is not. And so there you have make disciples, although that can happen in an unfallen world too. Baptizing them, converting them. So you have this idea of filling the earth with your children and baptizing the nations, right? So we're discipling within our household, we're discipling the nations. And another way to look at this is we are undefiling the earth, right? We are bringing the whole earth under God's dominion and rule, that there will be many, many, many. The earth will be full of the knowledge of God, that there will be many, many worshipers. So whenever anyone asks you, or when you ask your children, what is your purpose, what is your mission, we should know this, right? My mission, Mom, Dad, I'm a 10-year-old boy, is to form and fill the earth, to make disciples, to obey, to teach others to obey. And this is a glorious cosmic mission. And then our paths diverge from there. The details look different after that fundamental purpose, based on your gifts, your callings, the specific situation God puts you in, even constraints. We have friends, you know, people who live their whole life in a wheelchair or worse, and yet this mission is the same for them. It just looks different in different situations. So conclusions about our mission generally, not just women, thus far. Big picture, there is a lot to do. There is a lot to do. There is no time for idleness. We're to fill the earth. This implies families, right? Marriage, children, families. We're to rule, we're to garden, we're to cultivate, harness animals for our use, which has been done the world over famously. We're to transform natural resources, as we discussed last week, into tools and technology to further the creation, right? To do more, to glorify the Lord in cultivation and in craft and in beauty. We're to learn knowledge, we're to acquire wisdom, and we're to teach and disciple. So these are some of the things that we are to do. There's a lot to do. Now, what's a woman's role in this mission? Well, no surprise, women as bearers of God's image with men together, that's one of their purposes, have a key role in filling the earth, as we all know. And this role is captured in one of Eve's two names. Do you know Eve had two names? You may have read this in some of the books we pass around. Eve had two names. One of her names was Eve, and her other name was woman. Now, we consider her to have been a woman, a category, but her name was woman. And her two fundamental missions, as a generalization, are established in her two names. Eve, she is the mother of all. Woman, she is from man. Interesting. Men come from her, and she comes from man. She is the father of all men, and she is the helper of her husband. So her two missions are there. Two of her missions, fundamental missions, are in her name. She's to help fill the earth with people, to be fruitful. And she's to help her husband in his calling, to be a suitable helper, a woman. We see this in Genesis 2:18, Proverbs 31, Ephesians 5, 1 Peter 3. Other things women are to be involved in are building households, building houses and keeping them. Proverbs 14, the wisest of women builds her house, but folly with her own hands tears it down. And we see in other places that a big area of focus for women, as called by the Lord through Scripture, is to be keeper or manager, however you want to translate it, of a home. Women are, whether they're outside the home and doing things out in the world or physically inside the home is a key focus for a woman, especially women, normatively speaking, to whom God has granted a household and a house. Women also teach. A woman is to teach her children, specifically to worship and obey the living God, and to teach other children and other people as appropriate. Titus 2, 1 Timothy 5. So teaching is a big part of a woman's mission as well. She is to serve in the church and community. Think of Phoebe, Priscilla, Tabitha, Lydia, the woman in Proverbs 31. These are women who serve in the church and in the community. And as we know, women are life givers. They literally create life. God made humans, women who make humans. It's amazing. And women are given gifts generally of nurture and of care and of promoting life and encouraging life and fertilizing life. Well, I guess not that part literally, but of fertilizing it figuratively. Women are nurturers, generally speaking. Women are to be industrious for their household specifically. We think of Proverbs 31 there. None of this is new to us, but I'd like to summarize that role and that mission as a generalization for women by describing 4 key enablers that we're going to pull into this discussion of cell phones. 4 key areas to consider related to women's mission when we start talking about the application of specific tools. And here they are. Time, and some of these are not specific to women, but some of them are more bent toward women than men. So number 1, time. And as we just said, given the expansive scope of the mission, there is a lot to do. So time is a very important resource, a very important enabler of a woman's mission and a teenage girl's eventual mission as a generalization. Number 2 is personal relationships. If you think about what God told us to do and emphasizes for women, it is incredibly people-focused. Children are people. Love your neighbor. Neighbors are people. Help your husband. He is a person. Serve in the community full of people. So personal relationships are really, really vital and central to humankind and human flourishing and human mission success and humans glorifying the Lord, but especially so for women. And we know this to be true. You know yourself, you women, you are relationship, you are people-oriented. Number 3, serving touch, I'll call it. Whether you're physically touching or using your hands, or you could call this nurturing touch. This is vital to the life of a woman and people generally, but especially women. Think of hospitality, meals, caring for the sick, caring for your own children. There is a lot of touching involved. Ask any young woman in this room, young mother, I mean. There's touching all day long. Maybe too much touching, right? I just need some time alone, right? There's a lot of touching. And it is service touching. It is nurturing touch. So we have time, personal relationships, serving or nurturing touch, and then wisdom. And you could add more to that. But it takes great wisdom to raise children and to disciple them. Wisdom to teach, wisdom to disciple, wisdom to obey. Now let's dive into a little bit more deeply each of these 4 things, and maybe in some cases consider a contrast between a teenage girl and a more mature woman in several of these enablers. So time. One unique thing about teenagers in contrast to older women, teenage girls in contrast to older women, is that generally speaking, teenagers don't fully understand, to the extent they will, how precious time is. Would you agree? The younger you are, the more marginal time or idle time you are typically to have. That's because your life is more simple, whether you believe it or not, teenagers, it is. And this is natural, this is not lamentable, this is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's important to consider that as a teenager, you don't yet fully comprehend, or comprehend to the extent you will, how precious a resource time is. And part of that is obvious, you have a lot more time in front of you, right? And when you get to the end of your life, time is very precious. Moments are very precious. And what also makes time, this understanding of time different for teenagers, is that you have a longer time horizon in front of you. So the habits of use of your time that you set as a teenager will either be for good or bad for many more years than for someone who is dealing with this as an older person, or maybe trying to consider how they use their time. And so the stakes are higher in a way. You could state that negatively or positively. The opportunity is higher because you have your whole life ahead of you. And when you set your habits for the use of your time as a young person, it can bear greater fruit than if the light goes on in your 50s or 40s or 30s or even later. All right, let's talk about the second enabler, personal relationships. Women value themselves by their relationships. Would you agree, generally, or not? I think it's true. Men generally value themselves, they consider their self-worth, their worth, by their mission or by their task and their excellence in it, as a generalization. And there's a lot of overlap here between men and women. And this is why women desire to relate face to face. A woman wants to sit directly across from another woman and look at her in the face. Men, we do that, but we prefer to stand with about 120-degree angle between our shoulders. So we're clearly, I'm oriented a bit toward you, but our eyes are focused in the distance on the field, the tractor, the car, the thing I just built, the thing that's broken. We're looking at a task, at a mission, at an object maybe, and we're relating, but maybe not directly face to face. When women talk, what do they talk about? All kinds of things. But normally, let me tell you about my children, or my students, or my nephews and nieces, or my parents, or my friends. This is very normal and good because they are people-oriented people. Men often, as you know, will get together and talk about something that's broken, or something that fixed, or something going on, some task or some mission thing. And again, there's a lot of overlap here. This is a big generalization. Now, teenage girls don't have children, generally. They probably don't have students, although there's some exceptions in here. Some of you are teaching horseback riding or art lessons. They may not have nieces or nephews, but they're people-oriented, and so a teenage girl, understandably, is going to talk about and care about the one category they do have, which is friends. Friends are huge to teenagers, especially teenage girls. That's understandable, that's predictable, that can be a good thing. Friends are key. So we have time, we have personal relationships, a few more aspects of personal relationships, more generalizations about women. Women want to be loved. Anyone want to differ with that? How do we know that God made a world in which women want to be loved? Because he specifically told husbands, love your wives. And if we keep it simple, what's one of the fundamental things that a man desires? To be respected. How do we know that? Because God told his wife, respect him. So we know that women want to be loved. Women also want to be beautiful. And this is not a bad thing, this is a good thing. Christ is making his church, the bride, beautiful. Women want to be beautiful brides. We've had a lot of weddings recently. Women want to be loved. God tells the husband to love his wife, therefore she needs to be loved. Women need frequent verbal affection and love from people, especially a man, first a father and then a husband. Women want to be beautiful. Teenage girls especially want to be beautiful, partly because reality hasn't set in yet, right, in a way. And they are at a uniquely physically beautiful stage of life. So they're thinking about beauty a lot. Teenage girls will seek affirmation. They want to be in relationship, and they want to be seen by others as one who is in relationship. Teenage girls want to be beautiful, and they want to be seen by others as one who is beautiful. Teenage girls want to be loved, and they want to be seen by others, because they're relationship-oriented creatures, as one who is loved. And this is all natural. This is part of the created order. So personal relationships. A little expansion on enabler number 3 or focus 3 for women, serving and nurturing touch. Now, a teenage girl doesn't have the same responsibilities by necessity as a woman to nurture with touch. She probably doesn't have her own children yet. She's not the one ultimately responsible for hospitality that day. So absent necessity, one consideration of teenage girls is that it requires discipline, both on the part of the family and the girl, to practice serving and nurturing. When you're a young mom, it comes to you, right? Literally. They pitter-patter across the floor, and there's your opportunity to serve and nurture. It's demanded of you. For a teenage girl, there are far fewer demands to serve and to nurture, and we should know that. So it's going to require discipline to train for that. We know that the law is summarized by loving the Lord our God and loving our neighbor as ourself. And normally when you love your neighbor, they know that you're loving them. Would you agree? And that means that a key feature of loving your neighbor is that it's in 3 dimensions. They see you, you're touching them, you're handing them something, you're doing something with them. So keep that thought in mind. So part of serving and nurturing is that it requires discipline, more discipline for a teenager than later in life, where it's a work of necessity often, and that loving your neighbor requires your neighbor to know that you're loving them. All right, fourthly, wisdom. As expected, and this is not a problem, it's a part of the natural order of things, teenage girls are often less wise than older women because of less life experience. And that's okay, that's normal. But we need to work on wisdom, right? And because you're a teenage girl and you have less wisdom than an older person typically, this only increases the importance of acquiring wisdom because of the time horizon again. You have your whole life in front of you. It's like the time value of money. We all know that if you invest $1,000 a month between age 20 and 30, and then you never invest again, and your brother invests from 30 to 60 years old, you will have more money than he at age 60. It's because the early investment and the exponential growth will have a greater return. Wisdom is similarly. If you devote yourself to acquiring wisdom through study, through experience, through relationships, early on, it will have greater time to bear fruit and to grow. And so here's the summary of the enablers: time, personal relationships, serving, nurturing, touch, and wisdom. And you might be able to add others, but I want to focus on those for this reason. If you wanted to render a teenage girl impotent, not potent, in her God-given cosmic mission, which we discussed, what would you do? Here's what you would do. You would rob her of her time. You would make her time unfruitful. You would give her fake and shallow relationships, sabotage her understanding of love, sabotage her understanding of beauty, and flood her with fake affirmation. That's what you would do with relationships. Physical, nurturing touch, physical service and touch. You would pull her away from that. Pull her away from nurturing physical service to family and neighbor. And finally, you would thwart her growth in wisdom. Your goal would be to make her fruitless and joyless. That's what I would do if I wanted to take a teenage girl off her mission. Now enter the cell phone. You knew that was coming, right? The cell phone in the hands of a teenage girl. How do we know what Satan's strategy is? Satan takes our natural God-given desires and he perverts them. Like the cell phone, and I'm not calling the cell phone a Satan, but like the cell phone, which understands your nature, Satan understands your nature. He understands my nature. And he uses that nature and turns it for his own purposes. There are other passages we could go to, but in James 1 it says, "Let no one say when he is tempted, I am being tempted by God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, and he himself tempts no one. But each person is tempted when he is lured and enticed by his own desire. Then desire, when it has conceived, gives birth to sin, and sin, when it is fully grown, brings forth death." And we know, as we discussed, that the natural desires of a woman, as a generalization, are in some cases different than the natural desires of a man. And Satan knows this, and so he tempts men differently than women. Let's briefly consider men. A man is to lead his family, provide for his family, and protect his family. So what does the devil do? He tempts a man to abdicate leadership, to be lazy and or steal, and to provide for another family, which usually looks like going after another woman. So the 3 things he's to do, that's what God tempts him with, or that's what the devil tempts him with. So Satan also not only understands our nature, he understands our mission, and he will attack us in the areas that specifically that God gave us, our mission. We're to glorify God. He will pull us toward glorifying idols. We're to build our houses up and our households up. He will entice us to tear them down. We're to love our neighbor. He wants you to destroy your neighbor through gossip and envy and maybe even physical attack. God invites us to a life of peace in Christ, and the devil infamously wants to build enmity between brother and sister. So that's Satan's strategy. He understands our frame. He understands our mission. He uses our natural bents to tempt us, and he targets our specific missions, which can be separated generally in some cases or distinguished by gender, by sex. Okay, let's consider girls in this context. Girls are social creatures. We know that. Women are social creatures. Humans are social creatures, but especially women. And social media exists, therefore, girls will be drawn to it. By definition, right? If it involves people, the natural bent is going to be drawn toward it. As we know, social media is designed to keep the attention of the user, which means the person, as we know, is staring at a screen and not interfacing with people in 3D. And social media normally is full of pictures, moving or still pictures, videos or images, which are very powerful. And images can be filtered, selected, curated, edited. We all know how to do this. We have all done this. Therefore, as a teenage girl, I can make myself what I want to be, at least as it appears to others online. Going back to our natural bent, a teenage girl wants to be in relationships, wants to be loved, wants to be beautiful. And I have a tool that allows me to create myself. So I consciously and subconsciously curate my life, create myself to be a beautiful, loved person surrounded by friends. Would you agree? This is a natural bent. We're bent this way. Let's say a teenage girl's bent this way, and here comes a tool that can seemingly help that. And so we harness it. Carl Trueman, some of us have read this book lately, Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. In a chapter in there, he talks about education. Instead of this conformance view where I'm being educated to learn truth that exists outside of me, education is now a stage on which I reveal myself. And Instagram is basically that, right? I'm revealing myself. I'm also looking at other people, but famously, I'm revealing myself. Social media this is a common trait. So here's the challenge, here's the problem. The time and the mindset required to create myself actually robs me of real friendship, real love, and real beauty. And this means that it's counterproductive. Counterproduce. It does not produce. It has no produce. It has no fruit. It is not fruitful. Now, we have 5 girls, as you know, and several of them have been or are in college, which is a step, even at a Christian college, toward being in the world, right? And they have experienced, and you probably have seen, young women who are so popular, beautiful, surrounded by friends, but then you get to know them closely, and they're miserable, lonely. How can this be? This is unfortunately not uncommon today. Miserable, joyless girls who seem to be beautiful, loved, and in relationship. So, healthy use of the cell phone for teenage girls. We'll get to some practical things here. Remember the pitfall. The devil wants to rob her of her time, make her time unfruitful, give her fake and shallow friendships by sabotaging her understanding of love, sabotaging her understanding of beauty, flooding her with fake affirmation. He wants to pull her away from nurturing service to family and neighbor and thwart her growth in wisdom. So what do we do about this? This is really important. We need to have a fabric level approach, not a fiber level approach to this. It's really easy when you, like I've just done, summarized the actual and potential ills of a tool like this, to consider that tool, which is one thread in this fabric of life, of your life experience, of all the activities in your day, and to go, wow, this thread is really, really potent, and it's done a lot of bad, and let's focus on that thread, the cell phone. We could do that. But I want to encourage us today to look at the whole fabric. And I think that's a helpful analogy because Not to be too cliche, but our lives are more like a fabric than a thread, right? There's many aspects to it. And one thread supports another thread, complements another thread. Clearly, one thread can do damage, but life is more than one tool. So what about the fabric? The fabric of a girl's life are all the things she's involved in: working, serving, school, physical activity, reading, singing, all the media intake, everything. A fiber is any one thing in her life, like doing something on a cell phone. And the goal, of course, is to have a life, a healthy fabric full of good fibers, right, with no gaps. Now, speaking of gaps, particularly in time, if you have a gap in the fabric, what's going to fill it? The phone, often, right? What do you do when you're waiting in line? I've done this. Pull out my phone. What else would I do? Like, we can't even conceive of anything else nowadays, right? I pull out my phone and I twiddle the time away, and it's not like I was doing it anyway, sitting in line at the DMV. I might as well check Instagram or Facebook or whatever. So gaps in the fabric will be naturally filled with things like the phone. So let's not focus formulaically on the phone problem. Let's work on the adjacent threads. Okay, so I've got 10 practical recommendations here, and then we can get into some discussion maybe. And the 10 practical recommendations are in 3 categories: before the phone, when the phone, and then after you have a phone, or during life with a phone for the teenage girl. So the first category, when we're talking about the fabric, you build the fabric of the girl's life, of your daughter's life, long before she has a phone. So we're going to start talking about healthy use of this potent tool by talking about things that begin many, many, many years before the phone even comes. This is the fabric level discussion of a phone. All right, so my recommendation number 1, these are not laws, but they're my recommendations based on my experience and my understanding of the way God made the world and ourselves. Number 1, teach your daughters to crave real love and real friendships and real stories by showing and giving them real love, real friendships, and real stories. So what is the key element of real love, real friendships, and real stories for we humans? There's a lot of things that go into that, but fundamentally, I would say that the key element is, and I'll give you 4 pairings here, but they're all about the same thing: hurt and forgiveness, broken and restored fellowship, turning away from someone, being replaced by turning toward someone. In a phrase, death and resurrection. The best stories are gospel stories. And so, real love, real friendships, and real stories will be full of death and resurrection. And we want to fill our kids, boys and girls, and ourselves with so much of the real thing that when we're presented with counterfeit love, with counterfeit relationships, with counterfeit stories, we see them for what they are, and we don't want anything to do with them, because that's not the good life. Because we know what the good life is. Real friendships, real love, real stories. Stories in song, too. So the goal is to build up your daughter's immune system long before she gets a phone. Immune system would be another metaphor here. So that when she gets this potent tool with some glaring, sinister downsides to it or pitfalls, she's better equipped to see them for what they are, to see the counterfeit love, to see the counterfeit relationships when they're presented to her. We don't want to just treat the disease later when it overwhelms our daughters. We want to build their immune system. So that's number 1. Teach our daughters to crave real love, real friendships, and real stories, which are stories full of death and resurrection. In other words, broken relationships and restoration in the gospel. Number 2, be a family that serves with your hands. And for girls and mothers and women, whether you have children or not, this is full of nurturing touch, right? Not only nurturing touch, not only literally touching, but that gives you the idea, the essence of it. And you want to do this often, and this is hard. It's hard for me. It's hard for, I venture to say, everyone in here. You want to do this often and especially to those people that God puts around you who will not get you more status points among your peers. the unlovely, the ones who don't say thank you. We want to serve those that Jesus served and associated with. That requires actual sacrifice, right? Because you don't often get much in return. And another way to say this is idle time is bad for teenagers, boys or girls. Their life should be filled with work, service, in the home, outside the home, learning to daily die, to pour out their lives, the calories, the brain cells, the body cells that they have being poured out, worn out in service. So that's number 2, be a family that serves with your hands, long before you get a cell phone, especially in works of loving neighbor and nurturing touch for girls. Number 3, practical advice, recommendation, make all screen time disciplined and fruitful, long before you give a phone to your child. So what does this look like? Screens are a part of life, right? This is a whole nother topic we could talk about forever, but maybe this, watch a movie together and then ask good questions about it. Now you don't have to be finish the movie, everybody's tired, and wants to go to bed, and let's have an hour-long discussion and diagnose everything in the movie. But maybe the next day say, hey, what'd you think about that movie? I liked it. What do you think the main point was? What was it affirming? What was it denigrating? Who was the hero? Who was the villain? Talk about it. Redeem that time. Make them discerning about, it's not just watching screens to pass time or to distract. So we want to be discerning in screen time, whatever the screen time is, and make other screen time fruitful and productive so that when then you hand them yet another screen, they're trained to make screen time fruitful and productive. Another thing you can do is have a book with you, right? And we can model this. I can do a better job of this, but when there's idle time at the DMV, for example, pull out a book instead of pulling out a phone. Or pull out a phone and listen to something productive, a book or podcast or something. The more your thumb is flicking, that's kind of an indication that it's probably not fruitful. If you have a big fat thumb, that's not a real important muscle in the kingdom of God. Well, except as an opposing device. I guess a thumb is very important. In fact, ironically, in the Old Testament, what would they do? Now that I think about it, cut the thumbs off of the enemies. Ironically potent today. Can you imagine? How am I going to use my phone? You destroy a whole nation. Just cut the thumbs off. So number 3, make all screen time disciplined and fruitful long before you hand a phone to a child. Number 4, show them a joyful, fruitful life where the phone is a tool that is used and put away and not an extension of your hand. And we all know what this is like. I saw a set of some artist did a bunch of photos where he basically took pictures of people in the course of life with a phone in their hand, and then he just deleted the phone. They all looked really awkward and weird, kind of looking at their hand, but that stuck out to me. There's a lot of tips here that some of you know in principle and maybe even practice. Here are some. And our own children will call us out on this, which is helpful. We can be mutually accountable, especially with teenagers, right, who are learning to be adults. Whenever any human addresses you, put your phone down, generally. Now, if there's a toddler that's saying, mama, 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 like 100 times, and you have something to do, I get it, right? It's hard. But generally, when a person addresses you, even if it's a family member that you know well, in the kitchen, literally take your phone, put it face down, and look them in the face. It's a beautiful thing. Model that for our kids. No phones at the dinner table. This is why we have a table and why God made mouths to both talk and eat, so we would close our mouths on food, shut up, and listen to each other. And we're all facing each other. It is magical time. The dinner table is magical time. Another thing that many people do, or some I would say, no phones in the bedroom, nor maybe no phones in bed. The last thing your spouse wants to see as he or she falls asleep is you staring at your phone. Another thing you can do is use, and I've done this, I need to do it more, but let's say dinner guests are over, you're at someone's house and there is something brewing at work and you really need to check your text. Just go somewhere private for a few minutes. Pull out your phone, deal with it, put it away, and come back. And now you haven't broadcast to the whole room, hey, I'm just turning you all off a minute and I'm going to look at my phone. So there's a lot of practical things you can do. Hang out with number 5, hang out with people that do the above. You become like your friends. Look at the people you want to be like and imitate them. Do what they do. How many of the women you respect are glued to their phones or produce evidence that they are often online throughout the day? All right, so there's 5 practical tips before you ever give a phone to a child or to a teenage girl. When to give them a phone. This, I'm wading into deep water here, so I'll just give you my perspective. The principle is, the recommendation is delay giving a phone as long as possible. So what things kind of drive necessity of a phone? A big one is driving, right? For safety reasons, directions, etc. Now, I think that happens to align pretty well with reasonable timing in the life of a family. If a daughter is 16 and starting to drive and she gets a phone, that also gives you, aside from driving, it also gives you several years to work with her on appropriate use of this tool while she's still in your home, before she gets married or goes to school or something. So you have time to actually engage her and observe her. Probably the earlier trigger, though, is babysitting, right? We discussed this a bit. So 12, 13, what do you do, right? Parents are like, I'm leaving my child with you and you don't have a phone? Like, how are you going to call 911? I don't have a landline. How am I going to reach you? Well, we've done this a number of ways. One of the ways is you could have an old phone without a cell phone number that is Wi-Fi phone enabled, right? And you can FaceTime audio or whatever, WhatsApp, etc. And you could have your babysitter connect to the family's Wi-Fi with their knowledge. And now that phone, without paying for a line, dedicated line, will work in that home as an effective communication device. You can also strip down the phone, right? Keep it as an emergency only phone that's really of no utility, doesn't have a lot of tempting apps on it for a young girl. There's a lot of things you can do, and I imagine that we'll talk about this more in the context of boys tomorrow. Importantly, test your tool use. Does the use of my phone generally, or does my use of a specific app free my time for or enable real relationships, service, nurturing touch, and growth and wisdom? And if it does, how does it do this? And if you're like, I can't really answer that question, then it's probably not helpful in your life, to your mission. Does the use of my phone generally, or of this app specifically, increase my love for the Lord and help me to love my neighbor as myself? Can I go hours without my phone in the evening, naturally, without anxiety? Then ask your spouse or your children or teenagers, ask your brother, sister, or parents, am I on my phone a lot? Oh yeah. Are you serious? We have big blind spots. Recommendation number 8, don't load social media apps. On the whole, my opinion, in the aggregate, particularly for teenage girls, social media produces envious, discontent women. That's my take. It can be used for good. It is most often not. Group messaging is less problematic, especially if it's largely text-based. There's ways to have family text or sports team messaging or whatever that I would say would be different than image-based social media. Resources, you can look at the conference audio from the men's conference last fall. Look for a November 15th email called Conference Audio, Social Media and Video Games. You can read Jason Cherry's blog post, quote, Are you mature enough to use social media, from October 28, 2024. Big takeaway there, social media is not for the immature, which means it's not for teens, nor half of adults. Recommendation number 9, have other tools ready for idle time, like books. I mentioned that. And my final recommendation, talk to your daughters periodically and naturally about their phones. What would this sound like? Hey, let's talk about our cell phones. I, your father, your mother, am often tempted to use my phone unfruitfully, and I'm guessing you are as well, daughter. Notice, we're in it together. We have common temptations. It's like the father with pornography with the son. Oh, that's terrible, just run from it. Think of the approach compared to the father who says, looks pretty good, doesn't it? Yeah, it does to me too. Let me tell you about my experience. Let's fight this temptation together. We're in it together with our kids, right? So hey daughter, let's talk about this. What apps are you finding you use the most? Have you been able to fight the temptation to waste time and waste money? Do you find after extended use of the phone that you're envious or bitter? Which apps are kind of fostering that? What books are you reading these days? Is there anything I can do to be a better example on how to use this potent tool? All right, in conclusion then, what if I'm behind? What if I messed up as a parent? And I'm like, oh my goodness. I think I gave my daughter a phone too soon and it's out of control and I don't know what to do. Regardless of her age, I know it's hurting her. Don't clamp down rigidly or formulaically. Don't make it dramatic. There may be drama, but don't you be the cause of the drama, right? Talk to her. Hey, we were not wise in giving you a phone so early. I have not been a good example in my own phone use. We did not disciple you in how to use your phone for your good and God's glory. So let's define what healthy use of this tool looks like for both of us, and let's hold each other accountable. That could be fruitful. And then focus on the fabric of her life. Show her the good life, which is supremely achieved without TikTok, Instagram, Snapchat, or Be Real. Love her face to face, serve your neighbor with her, tell true stories, live out the gospel story, make all screen time fruitful, and hang out with people who do likewise. Satan is very successful in using cell phones to make teenage girls isolated, envious, bitter, and stupid. In other words, not wise. In sum, fruitless and joyless via idolatry. And by God's grace, through faithful stewardship and intentional discipleship, we can enjoy teenage girls in our church and our homes who have cell phones and love and serve their neighbors and are thankful and joyful and growing in wisdom. That's my prayer for us. This is a daily fight, like many potent tools, especially the ones with low friction of transition.